But this whole thing of, as a man, you should have your G-spot stimulated at least once in your life, it's absolutely mind-blowing. You'll never go back. Like, I've never wanted anything in my booty hole except what comes out, and at least now henceforth,
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
welcome to the Breaktime Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He's also a man who adds running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here because I need to show you the truth. Not that you're being lied to, but the truth may not be what you think it is, and it may not be what it seems. Mainly because I think some people have always believed some things to be factual, and some people look at things and assume that things are factual. Yet the reality is sometimes a little bit more disappointing than you think, and oftentimes just a slight variation, not that it's completely off, but a slight variation that can completely change how you look at everything. And all of the content in this episode does kind of embody that in some way, shape, or form. But then again, I could be wrong, as I always say in every episode. Almost every episode. And so, should you agree, should you disagree, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest that I should have on the podcast, then the DMs are always open. The social media links are usually in the description, and they rarely ever change, so you can always find them there. But in case you feel a little bit lazy, or you just don't feel like going to the description, you can always listen all the way till the end, because I always mention them there. But all in all, my DMs are always open, and I would be more than happy to take what it is that you send me and handle it accordingly. But all in all, I do thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you do actually listen all the way till the end, regardless of what it is that you hear. But all in all, with that said, I do need to get into what it is that I need to discuss for today. Now, I want to kick things off by talking about the LGBTQIAPP, or are there more A's? But anyways, there's a plus somewhere there. Most people usually refer to it as the LGBT, but for this particular bit, I want to focus on the G's, the ones that keep the movement strong and probably deserve way more respect out of all of them, considering that they are the ones that have probably carried the entire movement on their backs way more than all the other letters. But all in all, I want to talk about the gays for a little bit. Not necessarily the gays per se, but the fact that some of the stuff that they believe that makes being gay so much better than being straight may not be what some people might think. Now, there was a very recent study that claimed that the male G-spot isn't actually where people think it is. Now, if you are a man, then you probably know what it is that I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then, you can also listen, because I'm just going to explain it, because if you're a woman, you probably know pretty well what I'm talking about as far as the G-spot for men is concerned. And that is in the prostate, or, the prostate area is where the male G-spot is located. Now, the reason I've mentioned gay men here is because most people believe that the male G-spot can be best accessed from, the back end. Or, to be more specific, the anus. Reason being, apparently that's the closest that you get to the prostate, even though people have also mentioned the region between the balls and the booty hole, but who's really paying attention to that? All in all, people have always believed that the male G-spot is actually in the prostate, or is the prostate. But now, this new study that came out particularly recently seems to confirm something that is particularly different. Now, I'm going to read the article that had this information, then get into my thoughts on it, because I feel like going in on this and actually finding out, what it was that was said is particularly interesting, all puns intended. Now, the story says, and I quote, "Recent research published in the journal Andrology in the March-April issue 2026 suggests that the primary male G-spot is actually an external area known as the frenula delta, rather than the internal prostate gland. Scientists from the University of Santiago de Compostela in Spain conducted the most detailed neuroanatomical study of the penis to date. Their findings highlight the following. The frenula data, quote unquote, is a small triangular region on the underside of the penis where the head, aka the glans, meets the shaft. This area contains the highest concentration of specialized nerve endings and sensory structures such as the Krauss corpuscles, which detect tiny vibrations and friction. The study suggests this external zone is far more nerve dense and responsive to touch than even the tip of the penis or the internal prostate. Researchers noted that this region has been largely overlooked in medical training and sexual health textbooks for decades. While the prostate has been long referred to as the P-spot or male G-spot due to its ability to induce intense pleasure when stimulated internally, this study argues that the frenula delta is the true quote-unquote on switch for male sexual sensation. End quote. Now, I'm just gonna say this because a lot of the comments are already saying it. Gay homies, now, what exactly were you guys saying about why it is that you're gay and why the sex is so good? Because clearly, you don't need to be a batty man, to enjoy premium tier sex. You clearly don't. So for those of y'all that felt that you were having way better sex than straight people, clearly we have some studies that may be showing that straight people can also have pretty good sex without actually being a batty man. So if anything, it means that y'all are gay not because of, the sex part. Y'all are gay because you just like men like that. And the reality is that you just like men because you like men, not because the sex is any better. Okay, now don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this has been the primary reason why gay people are gay. I think a lot of people kind of get that wrong. And I saw a lot of people saying that in the comments, the whole, now gay people, they just like the booty hole because of the booty hole. Don't get me wrong. I think people oftentimes misrepresent the idea that gay people are gay because of the sex. Because if that was the case, then guys that are into pegging would technically or should technically be gay. But they're into pegging and they'll let a babe with a strap on, wear that strap on and hit them with a little bit of that plastic dick. But that aside, I do think that this at least beats a lot of this whole talk about how, guys should experience this every so often or at least once in their lives. Because honestly, the fact that someone is like, I want to get into your booty hole, I bet it'll be an amazing feeling. Clearly now I can say, you don't have to go in there to find my G-spot. There's other ways to do it because that's not even where the G-spot is. And if anything, it gives us an absolutely grand opportunity to give it another name and finally call it the A-spot. A for anus. It's very on the nose and it's very straightforward. And if anything, you can use it as a secondary point of intense pleasure. It genuinely does make sense for that. But this whole thing of, as a man, you should have your G-spot stimulated at least once in your life. It's absolutely mind-blowing. You'll never go back. I've never wanted anything in my booty hole except what comes out. And at least now henceforth, I can move with the backing of scientific data that I do not need anything going in there because everything is supposed to be moving in one direction. Because clearly, my G-spot isn't on the inside, But then again, for those of you all that seem to be really into it, that seem to like that kind of shit, go ahead, do it. It's a you thing. What it is that you do in your bedroom or in the confines of a bedroom, if you are actually going to do it in the bedroom, that's entirely a you thing. If that's your desire, if that's your kink, if that's your fetish, go ahead, do it, provided it's within safe standards and with any and all parties consenting to the entire thing. But don't, for the love of goodness gracious God, come out here and tell us that we should embrace trying out new things like having our male G-spot stimulated. Because clearly that G-spot ain't the same G anymore. And it's not a G thing to do it anymore. So with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I may have covered this before, but because I kinda enjoy having these discussions, I figured why the hell not. Now, While I was on TikTok not too long ago, I stumbled across a video where some guy was busy talking about how, with all of these things that independent women are getting, with the fact that women are working and making their own money, and now they don't have to marry for like social status or financial stability, that now they want more from men and men can't provide it, so there's so many more women that are single. And I'm not gonna lie, like me having stumbled onto this and seeing it, like I just looked at it and I just automatically knew that he had a specific target audience that he was selling this shit to, because I as a guy just looked at that and I was like, this is a massive pack of bull. Now, don't get me wrong, I could be wrong about this and maybe I'm reacting this way because I am a guy. But considering what it is that I know, I do beg to differ on that. But before I can give my thoughts on the entire thing, I want to at least let the clip play. Then I can probably look at maybe 1-2 comments on the entire thing. Then I can give my thoughts on it. But anyways, let me not dilly-dally this any longer. So without further ado...
For the first time in history, women are not marrying for social status or financial stability anymore. They're marrying for personality and character. And now look at us. We're all single. Because the moment women stopped saying, well, he provides, and started saying, but can he hold a conversation, society crumbled. Back in the day, a man just needed a job, a pulse, and a decent pair of shoes. Boom, that's a husband. Now, women are looking for emotional intelligence, accountability, basic communication, a sense of humor, and the ability to load a dishwasher without complaining or acting like it's advanced robotics. Women used to marry for survival. Now, evaluating core values and conflict resolution styles. They're marrying for genuine compatibility, which is beautiful, inspiring, and apparently a guaranteed way to be single until 2034. The moment a guy realizes women aren't impressed by job titles anymore, he panics, because what else does he have to offer? Sir, she doesn't care that you're a regional something. She wants to know why your last 4 breakups look exactly the same and why your bed sheets are blue and don't match your pillowcases. So here we all are, women with standards, men with confusion, and one giant dating pool where everyone's doing their best but still sinking. With the change to I want a partner and not a provider, men looked around and said, we weren't prepared for that at all. But here's the truth. It's better to be single because your standards got better than partner because your standards were low. And if personality and character are the new requirements, yeah, we're all gonna be single for a minute. But at least when you finally pick someone, it won't be because he owned land and could read at a 5th grade level. It'll actually have to be something deeper. And honestly, that's the part worth waiting for.
Okay. So the person who posted this up on TikTok is a guy who goes by the name Jordan Davis, of which he's Jordan with a Jour, which I find to be a little bit odd, but that's a personal thing and it's not really related to this. Now, to be quite honest, like I heard this and like the next thing that I was thinking was, first of all, women are still looking for providers out here. Contrary to what dude might have thought, women are still looking for providers out here, but let me not get ahead of myself a little bit too much, because I feel like I'm gonna end up discussing a myriad of things in a jumbled up way. And I also have a bunch of comments that I need to read out before I can get into my thoughts on it. They can clearly tell you what the target audience for this entire thing is. So let me read the first comment, which says, and I quote, "Women don't want to fix men. We want them to fix themselves and show up to the relationship like we do." End quote. Which is particularly interesting because this whole thing of wanting men to fix themselves is a little bit interesting, because there's a ton of babes that claim to have fixed themselves, but they carry a bunch of their trauma, a bunch of their problems, and just the fact that they're independent and able to travel and probably quote out a couple of motivational quotes makes them think that they've healed and they're good and they don't have flaws. But the truth of it is, some of them are some of the most flawed, egotistical, arrogant people out here. And the worst part is, they think that they're okay. But, I don't want to make it sound like I have anything against them, but that is something that I do see from time to time from a lot of babes that say stuff like this. Now, the second comment that I saw said, and I quote, "I just want to thank all the women before me that fought for us to choose this." End quote. Of which, you can say that this is as a result of feminism, or at least the first and second waves of feminism, and I am totally with that. I think that is a good thing, and while it is a good thing, it did bring some things that a bunch of women may not like so much, but that's not really something that I want to discuss in this episode. But so far so good. I actually kind of agree with what she said here. Now, last but not least, let me just mention this other comment which said, and I quote, "I divorced my ex-husband because he made $256,000 a year and he refused to pay the bills. I worked as well and took care of our children 24/7 without any help, and he still refused to pay the bills. They don't even provide." End quote. And if anything, this comment does actually go back to what I said right after the clip played, which is that women still want providers. Like, women still do want providers. It's just that now they want a bunch of other shit. And I will kind of get into that a little bit later. But at least this comment does actually prove my point. But anyways, with all of that said, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like, just judging from the comments, of which it's not like I cherry picked those comments because they are like the standouts and I just wanted to use them to prove a point. Like, even if you were to go and find this particular post on TikTok, like 80-90% of the comments are basically the same exact things. But the point that I am trying to make here is a lot of these comments do actually sound like they came from women because they were actually written by women on TikTok. And it does actually tell you that the target audience for this guy was women. And while I hate to ruin my own conclusion because I want you to listen all the way till the end, let me just say that it's not that this was general information that was there for people to basically take and be like, okay, this is true, this is something that we can work with, or this is very true information. This was just a guy that was pandering to women to get the appeal of women, or to get the attention of women who would be over there like, yes, this is the absolute truth. And while I know it might sound like I have something against this guy or something against this content, honestly, I don't. I honestly really don't. And for me to prove this, I want to at least critique this in as objective of a way as possible, so that I can show that the problem isn't that I have an issue with it. The problem is that the content is just being made to pander to women. And I want to start things off by asking a particularly simple question that kind of just hit me as this guy was talking, which was, if men are the problem here, if men and the fact that, oh, you needed a pulse, blah, blah, and a job, that's how you'd get a woman is the problem here, then why is it that most of the people that are posting up the issues with being single and why they hate being single and they're really trying to find someone but they're having trouble are women? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that men don't post it. Like, men also do post this as well. Like, I have seen guys who've posted this up both on TikTok and IG. But why is it that most of the people that post about the issues with not being able to secure dates, not being able to bag someone, are women? Because if so-called regional manager doesn't carry much else, if all he has is his job, then why is it that it's the women that are complaining about being single? Because if that would have been the case, then you'd see more and more guys at least mentioning or coming up, in some way, shape or form, complaining about how they aren't having much luck in the dating market, they aren't able to bag someone. And probably as an indirect result, you'd probably find like the pickup artist industry or, section or sector would probably pick up quite a bit of steam right now, if anything, because like they would want to find out ways on how to pick up more and more babes. But if anything, I feel like pickup artistry has really gone down. People barely even talk about it right now. And it's being looked at as some sort of a relic skill or relic thing that people had or used to have, because there's a lot more people that aren't even engaging in those practices anymore. At the same time, it's mostly the women that are online that are coming onto the internet saying that they're having trouble trying to lock in a mate. So is it the guys are the problem here? Or could there be something more to that? Also, if they're so uninterested in a guy's position or whether this guy is just a provider or not, then why is it that we still have women that want providers or care about careers to this day? Because a shit ton of women still do. Like, I remember there's a Chris Rock joke where he talks about how whenever you mention having bagged someone to guys, with guys it's like, oh, all right, like how fine is she, blah blah blah. But with women they'll be like, oh, is he nice, how was the date, what does he do? Like, they'll almost always ask what the guy does. And I think this is something that still holds true to this day. Now, don't get me wrong, there are different parts of the world where it might not carry as much weight. Like in the US, there's a lot more people that are making a ton more money from shit like tradecraft. So you saying that you're in plumbing or you're in woodwork or, you're doing some sort of quote-unquote manual labor skill might make it seem as though, probably you're doing particularly well, so the care for the position might not be as big. But so-called regional person or regional VP finance or regional marketing person, like that shit still carries weight. Maybe not as much to the point where people ignore everything about you, but it still does carry weight. In that you having a particularly dope position or this, really big name will signify that you are resourceful or you are, a high status individual, at least in the professional setting. But on top of that, it also means that the expectation for how well you're supposed to be treated or how lavishly you're supposed to be treated as a babe is usually supposed to go up. Like, this is shit that you see happening all the fucking time. Like, the babe that's dating a CEO will expect to be treated a hell of a lot better than the babe that's dating a guy in an entry-level position. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I don't really think I am. And of course, you can disagree with me all you want, and you're very welcome to send that out in the DMs, on whichever platforms I will have at least laid out in the description or at the end. But I've seen a lot of this kind of play out the exact same way I'm saying it. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like whenever guys say shit like this, or whenever people on the internet say shit like what this guy was saying, I feel like it ignores something big, which is the fact that this change didn't just affect women in one way or just affect women alone. It affected everyone. Because fine, yes, you can argue that the fact that women are making more money or the fact that women can make their own money will probably, adjust and shift dating dynamics in a very different way. At the same time, you also have to acknowledge that dating dynamics aren't just for women. They will also affect men, and men may also change, if not, will probably change and adapt to it as well. And if anything, I still find it weird that this guy thinks like, oh, back in the day, provided that you were a man with a job and you had a pulse, you could get a babe. I still feel like men had to show up. It's just that the parameters on what they had to show up on were probably a lot less as opposed to today. But then again, people, and by people I mean women, tend to think that men had it easier back in the day, and it was super easy for us, and this is the problem with pandering to women. They think that this is actually the truth, yet men have had to struggle many a time from like way back when till even right now. But that's kind of besides the point. The thing that I personally noticed, which I can probably say is maybe the biggest reason as to why it is that there's a lot more single people out here, is the fact that women started making more of their own money and they started prioritizing themselves. And if I stopped it at that, it would sound like I was basically repeating what this guy said word for word, which is why it's not where it stops. Yes, women started prioritizing themselves and they started saying that they wouldn't settle for less, which is perfectly okay and entirely their decision. But at the very same time, or at least but a little bit later, men also decided to start prioritizing themselves, and that shit has thrown the dating market into a bit of a chaotic scene. Let me explain. Women nowadays will basically talk about how you should choose yourself, you should gift yourself, and they will always talk about how, loving yourself is something that you should do at any and every moment, which is perfectly true. And the premise for that makes a ton of sense because women have actually taken quite a lot of shit from not so great guys. And, the whole dependency bit of it being removed from the scale actually makes things better for them. But now, at the very same time, while that is a particularly good thing for women, when men now start to employ the same thing, it kind of throws the entire market in a bit of freefall, because while you can say that women have taken a lot of shit from guys, there's a lot of men who have taken a lot of shit from women, all in a bid to get into a relationship or sustain a relationship or just bag a babe. And a lot of guys, especially guys who end up in the dating market for a while and then stop, usually get to a point where if they haven't managed to bag a babe, and I'm saying this is mostly guys who tend to be in the dating market for a while. The ones who settle down early probably don't have to go through this, but guys who end up in the dating market for quite a bit, especially as they're trying to grow themselves, will usually get to a point where it just feels like it just doesn't make sense anymore, and they really need to choose themselves, because you give. You're taking this babe out on a date, she ends up dropping you. You try hollering at this babe, she drops you, or she says that you're not trying hard enough, but there's another guy that'll come and will get it in like T-minus 15 seconds. Like, guys have seen that a lot of the effort that they're putting out here, especially from a lot of these women that feel like guys should be going above and beyond for them, isn't really worth what it is that they're getting. They're seeing that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So what do they choose to do? They back off and they decide to focus on themselves. So a guy goes, sits down, he's like, you know what, I'm being rejected by babe left, right, and center. Let me focus on building myself. There's guys that will go ahead, they'll do that. They make themselves a particularly good example of themselves after a bit of time. And as the women seem to give him a little bit more attention, he now starts to be a little bit more picky. If a babe chooses to disrespect him, he doesn't take that disrespect on the chin, he drops the babe, moves on to another one. If that babe cannot come through in some way, shape, or form in a way that he wants, he drops her, goes ahead and looks for another one. Even though he doesn't look for another one, he decides, you know what, I probably don't even need to date, let me just focus on me. There's a lot more guys that are focusing on self-improvement and building themselves, and this goes beyond just guys in their 20s. You'll even see and hear guys in their 40s talking about this, where they're like, they're not interested in dating anymore, they just want to grow themselves, make a bunch of money, and enjoy life. Feed into their passions, whatever hobbies it is, whether it's cars, whether it's traveling, whether it's something of the sort. Like, there's guys that are doing that, and they don't really give too much of a damn about babes, and that is throwing the entire ecosystem of dating into a bit of a chaotic situation. Because why is a guy going to be willing to spend X amount of money trying to take you out on dates because he wants to bag you, when there's another babe that he can go and bag and bang and let go of if he doesn't care too much about having something serious in a much shorter period of time? Why does he have to deal with a stressful nag that is annoying him, yet if he wants peace, he can just drop the babe and have the peace for free? Like, when you think about it, it does actually put the dating market in a bit of a chaotic situation, because a lot of what made dating possible was the fact that guys were willing to go out of their way to do some act that would make the babe seem a little bit more interested in the guy, or to show their affection or their love for a guy. But if a guy isn't willing to do any of that, then suddenly we have a lot more babes that aren't getting that far with a bunch of guys, because those guys just don't really feel like putting in the effort. And so you find that there are women that are going to be online complaining about being single, and while they are in a period of their lives where they have more control, more money and everything, they are still having trouble with the opposite sex, because the opposite sex just really doesn't care all that much about juice that isn't really worth much of the squeeze anymore. And I'm not gonna lie, either side choosing themselves, while it is good, for the individual, when it comes to relationships, it still kind of leaves us in a particularly precarious position as generations, both millennials and Gen Zs, because now we're having fewer people getting into relationships and more people complaining about singlehood. And maybe it is something that we should look into, but that's something that we can save for a different episode, because I kind of need to put a conclusion to all of this. And my conclusion for this one is, in as much as people might think, and by people I mean women, that them choosing themselves and doing so much better for themselves is making men angry, or is making it harder for men to lock them down, the truth of the matter is they chose themselves, and men are also choosing themselves. So whatever it is that they think has made things different might not actually be what it is. And the truth of it is, y'all are expecting more from men, and a lot less men are willing to put up with that. And that might end up making things a hell of a lot worse, even though it did make a bunch of things better for some of you. Also, you guys still want pretty much the same things as before. It's just that now you've decided to tack on a few more things on top of that. But, like you said, y'all wanted partners, not providers. Or then again, maybe I could be wrong, maybe I could be right, maybe there's something else to this, but either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.